the blocking out phase. In the blocking out phase, you just kind of think to yourself, there is no polygon count. Just kind of put it in the back of your head, there's no polygon count. The only time there's a polygon count is if I tell you there's a polygon count, and I do it for the benefit of you, the student, who thinks their machine is the end-all good machine of all good machines. And then they find out when you transfer maps in a certain application that it might be dog slow. So, 10, 20,000 polys become, a huge number crunch when it comes down to it. When you're doing research, look for how things are put together. For example, I need some hinges, and maybe I want to create like a really cool box that looks kind of like this, or if I want to build a book that kind of looks like that. I love this. This is very cool to me. So in the blocking out phase, I need hinges and the idea that they exist. So I'll make those hinges. I'll take the time to make all the little nuances of the hinges and block those out. Now I'm not going to go into that, but when you do that, don't use any of the primitives here in Maya. Stick to the shape of a box and go from there. Always use box modeling methods. The reason for that is even though in the blocking out phase it's not really important about topology, okay? It is important that it remains smooth on certain edges and then hard edge on others. That transition between hard edge and smooth edge just cannot be duplicated with a triangle stuck in the way. So in this phase, there is no triangles, there is no n-gons. So the best thing that you could do is learn how to model things from a box. Okay, so instead of using the cylinder, use it this. That's just my pet peeve, and it works out real well in the blocking out phase, in the fact that you need to develop something, but those triangles get in the way every time. Some just a little couple tips in the blocking out phase. So if this was a pin on a hinge and polygon counts aren't important, I will go and make some amazing detail on it just because it's not important. And I'll keep everything super smooth, super realistic type deal. I'm not worried about polygon counts at all. Don't climb too high very fast, though. You know what? Keep the idea that it's much easier to model at a lower level and then later on smooth it. So in this case, instead of adding a whole bunch of polygon loops, I just add loops to areas that I need to brace. And then I always kind of use 3 and 1 on the keyboard to kind of preview what smooth really is. Okay, cool. Now there's another way to do that. It's called Creases, but I really don't waste my time with Creases very often. And when you transfer maps, I don't like relying on anything that's a trick. So a trick is 3 on the keyboard. That's a trick. So when you go to burn or transfer maps later on, this will not show up as far as the end result. It'll end up looking like this. Same with Creases. I just don't like relying on the tricks. I would rather have a mesh smooth in there where I know this geometry is legit. It is smooth because there are polygons there. If I get too high sometimes, let's say I'm worried about system speed, well, in that case, what I do is highlight some edges holding Shift and Control right click, Edge Loop Utilities, to Edge Loop and delete. Okay, so this gets rid of all the extra stuff that you don't need. Taking some time to clean up your geometry, even though this is the blocking out phase in the topology or polygon count isn't important. Just think of the end run. If you have a machine that's not going to handle high polygon counts, you're going to have to do everything that you're at your disposal to make it look high poly like this. Okay? And I know this is a simple little tiny example, but still, that's the idea here, is keep everything very simple, easy to understand. Look for hinges, look for brackets, look for things like that if you're going to develop a scene. You know, those small things in a video game really do pay off. Anytime I play a video game, I walk up to a door and I see those little latches. I'm like, oh, somebody took the time to actually model in this game. So that is the blocking out phase. Once you develop all your little hinges and bolts and things and stick things together. One other thing, it's not really important about keeping, when you're in this phase, don't have everything one mesh. So for example, if I had something like this, and I'm going to smooth it, oops. There we go. So if I had something that was holding this nail to something else, these would not be, this wouldn't have the geometry coming off of it. It would be a separate piece altogether. I keep everything as a separate piece. And in the long run, when I have a whole bunch of these, let's say I have brackets that go all the way across like that. Now that's a pretty detailed piece from a distance. Okay, and if it's going to be really small, it's going to be even more detailed. If I make a hinge and have this in there and keep going on with that much detail, it turns out really good. And the end run, that's when I go mesh combine. So keep all your pieces kind of separated. In the end, you can just combine it. If you ever need to separate it again, you can, and then you can go modify center pivot to, so each piece has its own center pivot. So learn to combine, learn to separate, and learn to center pivot. You should be good. So those are the tips that I have for the blocking out phase. Enjoy.